Do you think that Elon Musk's increasingly inflammatory social media posts about British politicians accusing them of being complicit in rape cross the line?
So I think he is obviously right to be raising the general issue because, as I've said already, vulnerable young girls were being gang raped. I think some of the specific language used about Jess Phillips is not appropriate. But raising the issue, as he has done generally, I think is reasonable because vulnerable young girls were let down by the system and public bodies, particularly local councils, often Labour or almost entirely Labour-controlled, covered this up for decades.
What about the language used by your colleague yesterday, Robert Jenrick, who's the Shadow Justice Secretary? He wrote online yesterday, "We imported hundreds of thousands of people from alien cultures who possess medieval attitudes towards women." But to many people watching this morning, that might just sound not just inflammatory, but actually like he's trying to stir up division. Would you use those words?
I haven't personally used those words.
Would
but clearly, no. But clearly, what he is referring to, reasonably, is the fact that there were organised gangs of men, mainly from Pakistani heritage, we need to just be honest about that, were over many years abusing in an organised way vulnerable young girls, and that is completely unacceptable. It was covered up, it's a disgrace, and the truth needs to come out.
And everybody watching would absolutely condemn what happened. But do politicians have a responsibility to talk about this in a calm way, rather than the kind of language that you've just said you would not use, that we saw from your colleague Robert Jenrick yesterday?
Yeah, so politicians do have an obligation to do that, but they also have an obligation to tell the truth. And I think, Robert was highlighting this really important issue. He was right to do that. And in the past, concerns about, racism or cultural sensitivity or whatever you want to call it, meant this issue where young girls were being systematically raped was covered up because of these sensitivities. Now, that is completely wrong. It's morally bankrupt, and we need to be able to honestly and openly have these conversations. Robert is entirely entitled to raise this issue as he did. We need to be open and honest with the public about this in a way that didn't happen in the past, and frankly, protecting these vulnerable young girls who are getting gang raped, that is more important than cultural sensitivity, to be honest.
And, of course, everybody watching would want to remember that victims, of course, are at the heart of what happened and should be at the foremost of everybody's thoughts.